Cassandra Vale is a seer, meaning she has the rare ability to see into the other world, where a race of shapeshifting aliens, called shifts, have been integrating amongst ooze, replacing us for decades without our knowledge, and a government agency she thinks is trying to control them when she learns both the agency and the shifts have used her. She sparks a global resistance that outs the aliens and fights to liberate humanity. Though she's not sure if her choices were really right. In the spring of 1985, the first time I saw someone who wasn't there, I was 7 years old and helping my grandmother make breakfast in her kitchen. She was humming an old song and her apron was white with flour. When I saw her shadow on the wall behind her, it was wrong. Just not grandmother-shaped, but something lousy with angles. Too many joints folding in directions that should not be. "Grandma," I whispered, pulling on her sleeve. "Your shadow," she glanced, where I was looking, at the wall, and at the perfectly ordinary grandmother shadow cast upon the stained paper. "What about it, sweetie?" I stared. The contorted thing I had observed was no longer there, having been replaced by precisely what ought to have been there. "Nothing," I said, with trembling hands. That was the beginning. When I figured out I could see what other people couldn't, when shapeshifters showed themselves to me. Just me. I'm Cassandra Vale, and I'm 32 years old. For 25 years I have lived in a world where nothing is as it seems, and where the person sitting next to you on the bus could just as easily be wearing someone else's face as his or her own. In scientific language they are called metamorphic entities, but I refer to them as shifts. They are all around you, living among us, wearing our faces, speaking our languages, mimicking our lives with near perfection. Near perfect, but not quite. It's always slightly off. Something isn't quite right, and for reasons nobody can explain, I'm the only human being who can reliably tell the difference. I am employed by a government agency that officially doesn't exist. Agent Marcus Chen came after me when I was 15, had been in and out of nut houses for 3 years. My parents imagined I was experiencing elaborate hallucinations. The doctors suspected that I was becoming schizophrenic. Marcus believed that I was the salvation for humanity. The agency provided me with a purpose, so I didn't have to doubt my sanity. They brought me up, taught me how to record the tells, the giveaways that showed the real nature of a shift, the way they just never blink quite in the right time sign, what it is about their laughter, which always seems to be coming slightly from the wrong part of them, that they cast shadows that don't always align with their shapes, if you know how to look. But training me was one thing, as to why I could see them well, that was a whole different kettle of fish. Dr. Evelyn Thorne, a neuroscientist hell-bent on revealing the secret of my gifts, who joined my team 2 years ago. She has done every test known to man, scanned my brain in ways that make my teeth hurt for days afterward, tested my DNA, my blood, my dreams. What she found changed everything. "Your brain works on visual information differently," she said, with restrained enthusiasm in our final session. "There's an area in your occipital lobe that basically lights up when you're recognizing shifts. You can see these extra levels of reality that the rest of us are blind to." "So Afrika said, "Not for the first or final time. Your evolution," she corrected. "You're the piece humanity needed to survive." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was. All my life felt like an outsider, felt like I didn't fit anywhere, and, lo and behold, I got redeemed by not fitting anywhere. The shifts had been living among humans for decades without anyone even knowing they existed. At a homeworld, that is, at least one that we've been able to identify. They just showed up and started to take over people and live their lives, and no one noticed. Why would they? The substitutes worked perfectly, complete with memories and mannerisms and whether they took coffee, perfect, except for the shadows, except the way they held their heads when they thought no one was watching, except for those microscopic hesitations before they smiled, as though they were remembering how. My first case as a licensed private investigator was in Portland. A woman named Jennifer Martinez was missing, her husband reported. Only Jennifer. Martinez was at work, fetching her kids from school, sleeping in her own goddamn bed at night. Police deduced it was a domestic altercation, or perhaps a mental health crisis. The agency believed it was an air-shift. It was a Tuesday morning in March when I boarded the train to Portland, and my stomach twisted with nervous excitement. This was my first solo mission, my first chance to show that all the training, all the testing, all the years of being called crazy counted for something. At a coffee shop 3 blocks from her office, I found Jennifer Martinez, or someone who appeared to be Jennifer Martinez. She was by herself, sitting there reading a tattered paperback, looking at her phone every once in a while. To anyone else, she would have seemed like anyone else. a busy mother snatching a few moments of respite before resuming her day, but I could see the truth. Her fingers danced across the pages a bit too fast, as though she was scanning words she had already committed to memory. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and she checked it before it even finished lighting up, like she knew it was coming. And as she went to reach for her coffee cup, her hand hesitated for a split second, as though she were measuring the precise distance. I took a seat at her neighboring table, ordered a latte, and waited. A clearer test came when a child at a neighboring table began to fuss. Jennifer Martinez's head swiveled in the direction of the sound, and for a split second, her face registered nothing at all. No consideration, no irritation, no identification. Just empty evaluation, as if determining what reaction would be appropriate. Then it dropped, slipped into place like a mask. Motherly worry, tinged with relief that it was not her child. Perfect, practiced, and completely hollow. I phoned Marcus from my car in the parking lot. "It's a shift," I said. "Definitely a shift." "You're sure?" "I'm sure. The goon squad got there in around an hour. They have been trained to deal with shifts, to keep them contained and prevent mass public hysteria." I sat across the street as they approached Jennifer Martinez in the coffee shop, claiming to be old friends who had seen her through the window. She complied and continued to play the part as they escorted her to the van. I only saw her real face, then, but only for a moment, something ancient and hungry and not quite human, staring right at me out the tinted windows. That was 5 years ago. I've identified more than 200 shifts from the continental United States ever since. Each has been contained, studied, and eventually done away with. I never ask what happens to them after the trucks pull away. I don't want to know, but it is a job that has come with a steep cost. Once you've spent your days in a crowd of what may or may not be people, trust is a luxury you can ill afford. I've learned to sleep with one eye open, to suspect every familiar face, to dissect every conversation for cues of cunning. It's the isolation that's the worst part. I have no one I can really speak to about what I actually do, nobody who knows what it is like to grow up in a world where nothing is certain. There's also the question of the lack of trust, too. How do you tell a therapist you can't trust a reflection? Yup. About the closest thing to a friend that I've got, Thorn Evan, if it is based on you being so intrigued with what I can do. She's brilliant and devoted and totally obsessed with figuring out how my brain works. At times she seems to regard me less as a human being and more like a fascinating specimen, but she's also the only one who really believes in what I can do. When the brass starts losing faith in the program, when they're not sure if the juice is worth the squeeze, Thorn is the one who sticks up for me. It's her who reminds them that I'm not just marking shifts, I'm enhancing the technology that may one day enable others to see what I see. A break came last month when it should have been a routine identification in Chicago. The target was a man named Robert Fitzgerald, a middle manager at an insurance company whose wife had complained of strange behavior. He'd seemed strange for weeks now, asking weird questions about their shared history, contradicting things he should have remembered. He was at work, in a grey cubicle illuminated by fluorescent lights that had a way of reducing everyone to intermediate shades of the half-dead. He was sitting in front of a computer screen and occasionally pecking at the keys, but there was something off about his posture, too stiff, as if he held the position deliberately, with a tendency to fall into it naturally. I walked up as if I was a knee wapnapi, but asking where the bathroom was. When he didn't look up at me, I knew right away, and the look of recognition that flickered across his face before he could suppress it. Not the mild confusion one might feel upon running into a stranger, but the keen sense of a predator sighting. A potential victim. "I'm sorry," he said, his inflection just right, just human. "I'm not sure I can do anything." But his eyes continued to follow me as I walked away, and I knew I had made him as surely as he'd made me. That night, I phoned Dr. Thorne from my hotel room. "We have a problem," I said. "This one knows what I am." "That's impossible," she replied. "They're not aware of the differences in human neurology. They just mimic surface behavior. This one is different." He looked into my eyes, and he knew. She was silent for a long while. "Cassandra, don't you move 1 inch. Stay in your hotel, don't interact with anyone. I'm sending a team." But the team never arrived. I woke at 3 in the morning to find Robert Fitzgerald sitting in the chair by my window, a black outline, set against the city lights. He had not made a sound when he entered the room, had not touched a thing, but somehow, I suspected that he had been there all along. "You are not like the other women," he said without introduction. "The others of your kind, they see us, but don't comprehend. They think we're invaders, parasites. But you know what we truly are. I inched my hand stealthily toward the panic button on my nightstand. What are you? We're refugees, he said. Survivors of a war you can't begin to fathom, finding refuge in the one place we could. Your world, your bodies, your lives, your killers. Your killers, you replace people, erase them. We don't kill, he said, and for the first time there was real feeling in his voice. We preserve, we do. Everyone we inhabit has stayed with us. Their memories, their personalities, their souls. We're not erasing them. We're carrying them forward. I pushed the panic button, but nothing happened. No alarm, and the monitoring station made no response. What did you do? Your people, I told them you were safe, that the target had been taken down. Your Dr. Thornmass, intoxicated with joy at the news. He leaned in closer, and in the shadowy light, I noticed that his face was changing, becoming less human, and more not, you know. She's been working with us for months, tipping us off to your own movements, aiding in our staying one step ahead of your identification protocols. The betrayal landed on me like a punch. Dr. Thorne, who'd stood up for me, who'd had faith in me, who'd been my only friend in a world of suspicion and loneliness. Why, because she knows what you won't see. We're not the enemy, Cassandra. We're the future, a fusion of man and something beyond it, keeping the best of the two races. You're lying. I think about it. How many of us have you observed through the years? Hundreds. Still, here we are, still among you, still increasing. You do not know how to contain us with your piddly government agency. Or are they just overseeing, keeping up the illusion of control while we get on with it? I wished I could deny it, wish it away, hold on to the belief that I was the hero of the story, saving humanity from annihilation. But doubt was worming its way in, insidious and cold. How many times had I told about a shift, only to see someone who bore an exact resemblance to that person walking around free a few weeks later? How many times had the agency's explanations seemed too tidy, too neat? What do you want from me? I asked. We want you to stop, he said matter-of-factly. Stop outing us. Stop assisting them in hunting us. Join us instead. How can we show you what we really are, what we're trying to establish here? And if I refuse, then you end up living in a world where you can't trust anybody, where every face could be a lie, where your own gift becomes a curse that cuts you off from anybody else who you might care about. He rose, his being shifting like water, and solidifying, more human in appearance. But it shouldn't be that way. We can help you. We can provide you with the connection you've been looking for all of your life. After he left, I stayed in the dark for hours, looking at the panic button that failed to work and replaying everything he'd said, about Dr. Thorne's betrayal, about what the agency actually did, about the prospect that maybe I'd gone to battle in the wrong war. I telephoned Marcus in the morning. I need to come in, I said. We need to talk. The conference room at the agency's Virginia headquarters was sterile. Marcus was facing me, his expression carefully blank, and Dr. Thorne was standing by the window, unable to look me in the eye. Robert Fitzgerald was here last night. I began without any sort of introduction. He spoke with me on some subjects of curiosity. Marcus didn't respond, but I felt the infinitesimal tightening around his eyes. What kinds of things? But Dr. Thorne is in it with them, that the agency doesn't mitigate the shifts so much as manage them, that everything I did for the last 5 years was a lie. Cassandra, Dr. Thorne began, but Marcus silenced her with a wave. What did you tell him? Marcus asked. Nothing, but that's not the issue, is it? The point is, he was right. All of it. I can see it in your faces. Dr. Thorne at last moved away from the window. You have to realize, she said, when we first found them we thought they were hostile, but the more we found out about them, the more we realized they were just trying to survive. They're not conquerors, Cassandra. They are refugees from a world that is dying. They're looking for a place to carry on living. So you chose to be of assistance for them. We chose to control it, Marcus said, after making the correction, to figure out a mechanism for the two species to live together and not go nuts and start killing each other. Your recognition of them has prevented us from going down that path in many cases. You've been using me. We have been using your gift to keep it in balance, to prefer that the integration is slow, deliberate, respectful of human society. I looked at them, the people I trusted, the people who had provided meaning and purpose to my life. How many people have resigned and been replaced? How many shifts do we have out there, who have never been dead at all, pursuing real human lives? Marcus and Dr. Thorne looked at each other. Just in North America we estimate there are approximately 12,000 active integrations, Dr. Thorne said, softly. Globally, the number is likely to be nearer to 50,000. But it was staggering in scope. 50,000 people. and they are gone, replaced by something else wearing their faces. 50,000 families having been brought up with strangers whom they believed to be their loved ones. In 50,000 lives erased and echoed. And you're okay with this? I'm fine preventing a war, Marcus told me. I'm cool to not genocide. Either way, what about the real people? The ones who've been replaced? They're not there. Dr. Thorne jumped in. That's what we've learned. The shifts do not annihilate consciousness, they consume it. They add evidence to them, up to the point of memory transfer between hosts. It's not death, Cassandra. It's a form of immortality. You're talking about slavery, about imprisonment. We're talking about symbiosis, about evolution. Without another word, I stormed out of the meeting, my head spinning with what that meant for me. The purpose that I had always believed to be the one I should serve, the mission. I thought I'd been on the enemy, I'd fought against it, was all a lie. But the worst thing wasn't finding out I was one betrayed, or conspired against. The hardest part was knowing that Robert Fitzgerald had been correct. I was alone, lonelier than I'd ever been, and stuck in the middle of two species who both sought to use me for their own gain. That evening, I made a choice that changed the world. I dialed the number that Robert Fitzgerald had given me, and, within 3 hours, I was in a featureless DC office building, seated across from a council of people who had the look of humans, but were not. "You showed up," said a woman introducing herself as Maya Chen, no relation to Marcus. "Despite the common last name, we weren't sure you would." "I have to know," I said. "I want to know what's really going on here." What they enabled me to see over the next 6 hours would be, in many ways, more illuminating than the largest body of research I had ever written, as it forced me to question everything I believed about identity, consciousness, and what it means to be human. They led me into a room covered in mirrors, where I could see not just my reflection but somehow my thoughts, my memories, my sense that I even had a self. "This is what it's like for us to exist," Maya said. "Not as individual beings, confined to one body at a time, but as a single consciousness that can take on many forms. When we connect with humans, we're not displacing them, we're plugging in with them. But the original personality remains intact, enhanced. Even, we come with our own history, our own story, making for a richer, more complex individual than either species alone could be." She made a motion toward the mirrors, and then suddenly I could see them faces within faces, personalities superimposed, like transparencies. Every shift in the room was a crowd, an orchestra of minds playing together well enough to make sense. "We're not infidels," said another council member, a man whose image appeared to waver slightly on the screen. "We're artists, and we are creating new ways of life by using the best that two species have to offer. Because humans bring creativity, adaptability, emotional depth. It is we who bring stability, memory, the capacity to conserve and carry forward the essence of what makes all of us unique." "But why the secrecy? Why not present this to mankind? Your kind is afraid of what it doesn't understand." Maya sounded sorrowful. "We've experimented with direct contact before, on other worlds, and the outcome is always the same: war, devastation, the destruction of all we are trying to save. In this way, integration occurs slowly, organically, and there is no compulsion in religion. No man's religion is in danger. People are being replaced, and you don't have anything to say. People are being given immortality without their consent. Perhaps you would rather that we ask for permission and set off a worldwide panic, mass hysteria, the total collapse of your society." It was a persuasive case, and I found myself hoping it was true, but something still didn't sit right, some missing piece of the puzzle. "Show me," I said. "Show me one of the halfies. Let me talk to them." The council members exchanged glances. "That's complicated," Maya said. "Why? As discrete as when it is integrated, where the human consciousness is reintegrated into a greater one. They are still there, only they're not, a CCESSIBLE in the manner of one that you are imagining currently, so they're prisoners. They're proponents of something greater. His parts just interwoven like any instrument in an orchestra, all a part of a beautiful symphony." But I could see the truth in her eyes, the truth my gift had been revealing to me all along. The shifts weren't saving human consciousness, they were eating it, putting it on like a coat, while the person behind it, the actual person, was buried, somewhere inside, unable to talk, or move, or even scream. "I must be off," I said, rising suddenly. "Cassandra, wait." But I was already making my way past them toward the door. I heard them calling after me, their voices harmonizing in a fashion human voices never could, making a sound that was beautiful and nightmarish at once. I sprinted through the DC streets, my head pounding as hard as my feet. Both sides had been lying to me. Both sides had been using me. But the truth was simpler and uglier than either of them had claimed. The shifts were not refugees, or artists, or the next step in evolution. They were like parasites, living off human consciousness. And still they pretended to be conserving their hosts, and the agency wasn't in control of the situation or averting war. They were not innocent in what was essentially the slow-motion genocide of humanity. I was the only one who knew the truth, and the only one who could stop it. The details of the plan fell into place over the next 3 days. I called people I had gotten to know during my time in the agency, people who had had their own doubts about the program, people who had witnessed things that didn't add up, a network of agents, scientists and government officials who had long been quietly questioning the official explanation. Dr. Sarah Kim, a neuroscientist who had recently been working on shift biology. The investigators repeatedly postponed the change after it was discovered by Agent Tony Rodriguez, who observed inconsistencies in the extraction reports. Director Linda Foster, who had been skeptical of the agency's true purpose from the start. We had come to a safe house in Baltimore, 6 people who had dared everything to understand the truth. I explained what I'd found, showed them what evidence I'd been able to find, showed how tracking shifts could be used not just to see where they were, but spot them. We have to go public, Director Foster said. Full disclosure, all evidence, out, let the world see what's going on. They're never going to believe us, Agent Rodriguez protested. Shape-shifting aliens, government cover-ups, it sounds like science fiction. Not if we can help it, I replied. If we can make them see what I see, they won't. Dr. Kim leaned in, her eyes shining with potential. The images of your brain that Dr. Thorne took, they have unique combinations of neural pathways which allow you to perceive shifts. If we can induce those patterns in other people, we can build an army of truth-seers, I concluded. The technology was developed over 6 months, 6 months of anonymous researching, of speaking discreetly to allies, of quietly stockpiling resources, of networking with people who were willing to risk their lives and everything else to save humanity. Dr. Kim developed a neural implant that was able to mimic for a time the abnormal brainwaves that had granted me my powers. It was imperfect, and it didn't last for long, but it was something. Agent Rodriguez was the first test case. The experiment was conducted in a makeshift laboratory. In the decrepit warehouse, Dr. Kim monitored his vital signs, and I waited and hoped for the slightest difference. How do you feel? Dr. Kim inquired once the implant was turned on. Rodriguez glanced around the room, his face shifting from confusion to horror to disbelief. I see them, he whispered. The shadows. They're wrong. They're all wrong. We implanted it in a dozen specimens, and all 12 awoke with the same insight. For the first time in human history, other people could see what I had been seeing all along. The offness, the tiny, hidden tells that hinted at the truth beneath the masks. The simultaneous disclosure was on a Tuesday morning in March, 1 year to the day after I had first met Robert Fitzgerald. We'd pored over shifts in leaders from around the country, government officials, media personalities, corporate executives, individuals whose departure had passed without a ripple, yet whose impact was large. Our volunteer broadcasters at stations around the world with neural implants went live at precisely 9 a.m. Eastern Time. There were multiple witnesses who observed them finding shifts in real time, on camera. The proof was visceral, undeniable, impossible to dismiss or cover up. In a few hours, the world changed. The story was even reported by news stations from around the world. People flooded social media with videos and testimonials. Governments fought back, to reassure, to stay in some kind of control. But control was precisely what they hadn't had. The truth was out, and no cover-up could spread fast enough to overtake it. The shift's response was swift and ruthless. In days they dispensed with the need for secrecy and started parading around in the open and attempting to dominate human governments outright. But they'd miscalculated how fast humans could adapt, how efficiently we could organize in response to an existential threat. The war lasted 3 months. It was a conflict like no other in human history. How do you fight an opponent who is cosmetically the spitting image of you? How do you distinguish friend from foe when the foe has your brother's face? The pivotal factor were the neural implants. We mass-produced them and dispatched them to military units and civilian populations, developed a network of people who could see through the fraud. It wasn't a perfect solution. The implants were painful, temporary, and not everyone could stand to use them. But they worked. The last battle was fought in an underground research facility of the agency. I took a squad of soldiers, all of whom were wired, deep into the complex where the shifts had fought to the last. There we discovered them. In the deepest part of our detour, dozens of them, swarming around a giant organic space which was living, with an eerie blue light. Dr. Thorne was there, but she wasn't Dr. Thorne any longer. Her features rippled and changed and shifted and flowed like water, and underneath I saw the alien mind. "You have sealed the fate of our races," she said, her voice a chord between human and something else. "We could have coexisted. We could have made something special." "Not at the price of human freedom," I answered, and brandished the weapon Dr. Kim had made just for this occasion. "Not at the price of our souls." The structure that whoever was behind them had been their communications hub, a link back to whatever tatters of their once great society they had left. If they could destroy it, they'd be separated from their source and remain in their human forms, susceptible to normal weapons. It was a short, brutal battle. The shifts fought with a savage ferocity, their bodies warping and revealing no trace of their human semblance. But there were more of them, and they were better armed, and for the first time in at least a generation, they were up against human beings who could see them for what they were. It had taken years, and when it was over, when that last shift fell and the hub was in ruins, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The world was safe. Humanity was free. The awful long nightmare was at last finished. But victory came at a cost. The neural implants caused side effects, hallucinations, seizures, permanent brain damage in certain cases. Many of the volunteers who helped paint the picture of truth did not live through the war. The world had been secured, but at a cost far higher than anyone had ever dreamed. In its wake, I found myself in place I would not have dreamed possible. A hero. The woman who had saved humanity from an invisible invasion, who'd seen what others could not. There were books written about me, movies made, awards sent my way. But I knew the real truth. I wasn't a hero. I was a single human person who had been cursed with the great and terrible gift of being able to see what others could not, who had been thrown into a situation against my will, who had done the best I could make of the choices that had been put before me. The world reconstructed itself, slow, peckish, sleepless. A new set of protocols was developed in order to find the potential shifts. The data embedding technology was improved, rendered safer, installed as part of regular medical checkups. We had learned to see, and should never again be blind, so I stopped being a regular waiter, moved to a small town near some mountains in Montana. In fact, the shadows fell exactly where they were supposed to, and every face belonged to exactly to whoever it seemed to belong to. I opened a little bookstore, married a man named David who made me laugh and who never asked me why I sometimes looked at his shadow for a little too long. Had 2 children who didn't seem to have inherited either my gift or my curse. But there are still late nights when I wonder if we did it right. If there could have been another way, a solution that didn't involve war and death and the obliteration of an entire species. If the shifts had been telling the truth about preservation, about immortality, about the symphony of consciousness that they said it was making. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection in the store window, I notice something that makes me stop. A shadow that doesn't quite conform. A movement that feels partially wrong. And I'm aware that the ability to see the truth comes at the cost of never really knowing what the truth is. The world is safe now. Humanity is free. But freedom, I have come to learn, is not the same as certainty. And sometimes, in the quiet times when there's no one else at the store, between the regular beats of the regular life, I wonder if the true shapeshifters were never the aliens at all. Maybe they were us. Maybe they always had been. Perhaps the greatest lie was that we were who we said we were. Who we thought we were, who we could be, when what we meant was who we would allow to die in our name, to live in theirs mapped for sure. But those are musings for another day, another question. For now, I'm happy to sell books, watch my kids grow and hope and believe that the shadows in my shop land right where they are supposed to. For now, that's enough. Truth, after all, is a luxury not everyone can afford. And sometimes the best gift you can give the world is the small kindness of not making you share it with them. Eventually we are all wearing masks. We are all hypocrites. We all have shadows of ourselves that are not quite our real selves. The distinction is that some of us create our deceits, whereas they lie in wait for others. I chose to save humanity. Those are questions I am going to take to my grave of whether that was the right decision, whether that cost was too high, whether there was another way to do it. But I sleep better at night knowing that when my kids look in the mirror, there's no one in that reflection except themselves. And for now, in this little town with its honest shadows and true faces, it's enough. That's more than enough. It's everything.